Good evening, everybody. It is June 5th, and I've been picking a ton of tomatoes recently. In fact, so many, I have to show you what my countertop looks like. It's starting to get absurd, and believe it or not, I've given a number of them away to people, and I've eaten a lot of them, so I've really harvested about double that. So the weather outside is pretty bad, and it's going to rain for the next week or so, on and off thunderstorms. It's going to be pretty lousy in the south. So I'm going to take this opportunity to do a few tomato tasting videos. And if you've been following my channel over the past 6 months or so, you will know that I have a theme to my tomato garden this year. I am growing a lot of the Brandywine varieties and some hybridized versions of the Brandywine varieties. And I have avoided growing a lot of Brandywines for years due to their notorious difficulty to grow, how susceptible to diseases they are, and how well known they are to not be very prolific. But now that I have a large backyard and a sizable garden, I can afford to have a few plants that don't produce. So I have 3 varieties right here in front of you. I have the Brandywine Yellow, the Brandywine Sudduth strain, which is the infamous pink Brandywine, and this is the Brandy Boy, which is a hybridized version of the pink Brandywine that I have been growing for years. It is an F1 hybrid from Burpee, and it's a trade secret as to what they crossed the pink Brandywine with to get this, but this has been my favorite tomato for 3 years running. I just love it. And you can see how incredibly similar they both are. You can see how incredibly similar all 3 are, really. But the difference comes when you flip them over. This yellow Brandywine is actually beautiful, and I'm having very good luck with fruit set on the plants. But the Brandywine Sudduth loves cracking. All of my Brandywine Sudduths cracked due to a rainstorm. We've been having drought here, and the tomatoes were absolutely perfect until a rainstorm came in. Finally, after something like 45 days of drought, and everything just split. Even the green tomatoes split. But the Brandywine Yellow held up pretty well, and the Brandy Boy held up pretty well. So as you can see, the hybridization of the Brandywine Sudduth really takes care of some of the cracking and the deformation that happens to the Brandywine Sudduth. But the most important thing will come down to taste. But before I get into that, I want to do a little bit of a weigh off. And it's really shocking how similar all of these tomatoes are. So it is not a big surprise that they are in the same family. So here's the Brandywine Yellow, weighing in at 11.4 ounces. Here is the Brandywine Sudduth strain, weighing in at 9.95 ounces. And here is the Brandy Boy, weighing in at 10.95 ounces. So they're all pretty good sized tomatoes. I would call them medium to large. Once tomatoes start getting into the 1 pound plus range, they start getting a little funky, in my opinion. They don't ripen as evenly, so I really like the roughly 12-ounce tomatoes. So, now that we know what they weigh, let's see what they look like inside. One thing that is very important to tomato growers is the meatiness of the tomato. People do not like tomatoes that have a tremendous amount of seeds in them. So the closer it looks to meat, the better. Wow, that is absolutely gorgeous. That is the Brandywine Yellow. That is just incredibly meaty. That is amazing. That is one of the most beautiful tomatoes I've ever seen, and I am not a yellow tomato fan, so I'm curious as to how I'll like it. This is the Brandywine Sudduth strain. Also incredibly meaty and just dripping with juice. Not a lot of seeds. It looks beautiful. And you can see how they compare side by side. And finally, the Brandy Boy, which has been a proven winner for years and years in my garden. Also beautiful. You can tell it's hybridized because it doesn't have the meatiness of the other two. You can see how the cavities, they don't ripen exactly as perfectly. There's a little bit of green left to them. So clearly, in order to stabilize and provide a better, rounder shape and more crack resistance, it may compromise the meatiness a little bit, but they are all similar. So what this really is going to come down to is taste. That's really the most important part. And now comes the moment of truth. I'm going to start out with the Brandywine Yellow, and before I eat this, I want you all to know that I'm generally not a big fan of yellow tomatoes. I like my tomatoes either to be smoky, like the earthy mahogany tomatoes are, or acidic, like the red and pink tomatoes are. I'm not a big fan of the mildness of a tomato. When a tomato is simply mild and creamy, it needs to have some kind of other undertone for me, but I've heard good things about this tomato, so I'm really looking forward to this. That is by far the best yellow tomato that I've ever had. That tomato is delicious. If you don't like yellow tomatoes, for the reasons that I just outlined, you should really consider this one. Oh yeah. This tomato has bite to it. That is very unusual for a yellow tomato. For a tomato to have this much flavor that's yellow is really something to me. This is absolutely delicious. I love this tomato right here. It is soft, it is velvety, but it is acidic, and it patches up. It packs a punch, and it has real tomato flavor to it. That is just fantastic. I love that right there. Now we will try the pink Brandywine, the Sudduth strain, and many people call this the best tomato that there is. They call this the classic tomato. This is supposed to be the granddaddy of them all. So we'll see how it holds up to the Brandywine Yellow and literally every other tomato I've ever had in my life. That is really good. I'm going to have to say the Brandywine Yellow may be better. They taste very, very similar. They have the same flavor. It's very acidic. It packs a lot of punch to it. But I would say this tomato is a slightly watery version of this tomato. I'm not saying that it is watery. I'm saying that it's a little more watered down than this. It's tough enough to call that I really need to try them side by side. Okay, now that I've had them side by side, there is a difference. This is much smoother and creamier. This is more acidic. This has a much more high acid bite to it than this tomato does. They both have a very similar strong tomato flavor. This is, now that I've had them side by side, I actually think this is the more flavorful tomato, or maybe I just got closer to the center where it's meatier. I would say this probably is a little bit more flavorful and much more acidic than this tomato is. This is a milder version of this. Now I will compare them to the Brandy Boy, which up to this point has always been my favorite tomato. And you can see just how tremendously similar this is to the Brandywine Sudduth. The Brandy Boy is fantastic, but compared to these two, I have to say, and it pains me to say it, it can't compare. This is a delicious tomato. It sets way more fruit than these two do. The fruit set on these two is scarce compared to the Brandy Boy. You'll get a lot better yield off of these, but it's definitely not as strong. It's definitely not as flavorful. There's not as much acid to it. If you don't like acidic tomatoes, you might actually like the Brandy Boy better. They all have a similar flavor to it, but this is the strongest. This is a smoother, creamier version of the Brandywine Sudduth, and this is a more watered down but much more prolific version of the Brandywine Sudduth. I want to do them side by side, the Sudduth versus the Brandy Boy, just so I really make sure I'm giving you an accurate review. Yeah, these are both very similar. They're very similar, and now that I both had them in my mouth at the same time, there's not as big of a difference. But this is a more acidic, biting version of this. But all three of these are absolutely delicious. Fantastic tomatoes. This is by far the best yellow tomato I've ever had. This is one of the best red tomatoes I've ever had, and I will still continue to grow the Brandy Boy every single year, because you cannot get a tomato as flavorful as the Brandy Boy that has the yields and uniformity and disease resistance. You're going to have to plant 3 Brandywine Sudduths to get the yields of 2 of the Brandy Boys. It really is a 50% increase going with the Brandy Boy. So for overall productivity and uniformity in fruit and resistance to cracking, the Brandy Boy is tough to beat. But man, these two are fantastic tomatoes. They're all fantastic. You cannot go wrong with these tomatoes, let's just put it that way. So there you have it. That is my review of the Brandywine Yellow, the pink Brandywine Sudduth strain, and the Burpee Brandy Boy hybrid. There are so many times in life where we hear rave reviews about things, and then when we actually experience them, we are left disappointed, and we put things on a pedestal and we set us up for disappointment, basically. But this is not one of those events. This is not one of those occasions. All 3 of these tomatoes are absolutely fantastic. I love this Brandywine Yellow. I love this Brandywine Pink. And of course, the Brandy Boy has been one of my favorites for years and years. All of these are winners. You will not regret growing any of these. There you have it. That's my review. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for future updates and more videos like these. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Look at that, everybody. Look at the beautiful colors from all these tomatoes. This is a huge mixing bowl, and it filled it about 1/3 of the way. That's a couple of pounds of fruit in there. These are so good. They are so good you don't even need salad dressing on them. Oh my God, that's just delicious. This is why I grow tomatoes, everybody. This right here. This is the best. This is the best. Make sure you do it. Have a great day, everyone.